Hello everyone, first news update for 31st of March. Now it's about 10 o'clock and I have prepared quite a number of news that I want to share with you in this program. And I'm going to start with this report from TASS News Agency that according to Defense Ministry, overnight, early hours of this morning, 66 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over the several Russian regions. To be more precise, 41 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 24 drones over the territory of Kaluga region, and 1 drone over the territory of Kursk region. At this point, no detailed information if there was any casualties as a result of this strike or more or less significant damage. If any update on that, I will share additional information in late updates or on my Telegram or Twitter X page. TASS News Agency is also reporting that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the liberation of settlement Zaporozhye in a DPR. Probably you already noticed that quite a number of settlements in this former Soviet Republic has similar names. For example, Zaporozhye we know as a city, big city on a Dnieper river that will be liberated shortly, relatively shortly, but this time we are talking about village Zaporozhye in a DPR, which was liberated from enemy forces. This information confirmed by Defense Ministry. This settlement located on the southern western flank of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration. So progress of the Russian forces in this direction. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Russian troops launched, as a result of a long-range precise strike that was conducted by Russian forces, Kiev regime's secret services special forces were neutralized and a number of foreign mercenaries. So as a result of a missile strike on a temporary deployment point of units of their SBU and their special operations forces of the main intelligence directorate of Kiev regime, up to 170 enemy troops were neutralized, including foreign mercenaries. This information is coming from Defense Ministry, and according to some other sources, this strike took place in Slavyansk area. A significant success, I will say, because to neutralize 170 highly motivated, most likely, and highly trained members of their special forces is a quite success, especially for one strike. Our team, meanwhile, is reporting about some interesting article in New York Times that revealed level of US involvement into Ukrainian crisis in this proxy war against Russia, basically. The administration of the US President Joe Biden was far more deeply involved in backing Ukraine's fight against Russia than previously acknowledged. New York Times investigation has claimed, stressing that Washington's intelligence was indispensable for Kiev's military operations. Their lengthy report, released on Saturday, offers a deep dive into an extraordinary partnership of intelligence, strategy, planning, and technology that become Kiev's secret weapon in countering Russia. While the Pentagon supplied Ukraine with tens of billions of dollars of military aid, it also provided crucial intelligence that enabled Kiev to attack Russia's command and control centers and other high-value targets starting in mid-2022. The New York Times said, according to the article, the heart of this partnership lay at the US Army facility in West Baden, Germany, where American and Ukrainian officers set daily targeting priorities. So this was daily stuff, which they reportedly referred to as a point of interest for fear of appearing too provocative. American and Ukrainian officers planned major counteroffensives together and launched larger, long-range, high-precision strikes using Western-supplied weapons on Russia's Crimea. New York Times also claimed the strikes using Western-supplied missiles have led to civilian casualties. With one ATACMS strike, for example, on Sevastopol beach in June 2024, killed 4 and injured more than 150 people. So it's not just their militaries that were targeted, but also civilians, hundreds of civilians. The US has also dispatched their dozens of military advisors to Ukraine, some of whom were allowed to travel close to the front line. I wonder how many of these are so-called advisors from US were eliminated by Russian forces, probably a lot. In 2024, the US extended its permission to allow Ukraine carry out limited long-range strikes using American-supplied weapons into internationally recognized Russian territory for years considered a red line. Washington provided Kyiv with their targeting data for their strikes. One European intelligence officer was shocked by the level of US involvement in the conflict, telling the Times they are part of the kill chain now. So this is just a part of this article. If you have access to it, probably it's worth to read, pay some attention to. Well, even though this information, none of it comes as a surprise for at least vast majority of our community, because I was talking about level of involvement of US and other NATO member states since the beginning of this programs, right? Since I started working on this project, and besides that, Russian high-ranking officials many times stated that Kyiv regime itself has no means to launch long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. We also know that, for example, when 2023 counteroffensive was launched by Kyiv regime, Russian side also released information that these operations were planned by NATO officers, US officers being NATO officers too, right? So this didn't come as a surprise for majority of us. But once again, this article in New York Times highlights why I was saying all this time that in no circumstances US can be seen as a mediator in this conflict, because US is and was and most likely will be for foreseeable future party of this party in this conflict, right? Most involved, one may even argue, among NATO member states, even though right now France and UK are trying to play bigger role in this proxy war. But well, interesting article that are worth paying attention to. I guess RIA Novosti meanwhile is reporting that for whatever reason Trump went to start threatening Russia again. He had an interview with NBC, and yeah, he was acting tough as he usually does, and it's better probably to listen to some video from NBC.
Just hours ago, President Trump called me to tell me he is, quote, pissed off with Russia's President Putin and threatened to impose secondary tariffs on Russia's oil. Quote, if Russia and I are unable to make a deal on stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault, which it might not be, but if I think it was Russia's fault, I am going to put secondary tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Mr. Trump said 25% tariffs on Russian oil could happen any moment and told me he plans to speak with President Putin this week. The president told me, quote, I was very angry, pissed off when Putin started getting into Zelensky's credibility and started talking about new leadership in Ukraine.
So, dear friends, how you would comment on this show from Trump, that he was pissed off on Putin when Putin started talking about Zelensky's credibility or the legitimacy? I mean, Zelensky has no legitimacy and has no credibility. It does not matter if anybody likes this or not, but true is true, right? And what about threatening Russia and friends of Russia with their tariffs? And this is crazy. This is, yet again, dear friends, I mean, too bad. It's just too bad. And Trump mentioned that he will have a phone conversation with the Russian president. He might call, or his administration, but I really hope Russian president has much more serious stuff to do than spend some time talking to this clown, right? And therefore, I really hope Russian side will decline phone conversation, because it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing, by the way, at this point, to continue playing this game that Trump is trying to de-escalate something, and therefore it's worth to pay some attention to him. No, man, it's just enough is enough, right? Expert groups may continue to talk forever, right? But if Trump is threatening Russia for actions that are conducted by European states, by the way, right? Because it is a European states that derailed preliminary agreement that was reached between Russian and US teams in Riyadh about Black Sea initiative. And it is a Kyiv regime and its NATO backers, France and UK, first of all, at this point, that are derailing energy ceasefire, that are breaching energy ceasefire on daily basis. And despite that, if Trump is choosing to threaten Russia, well, I mean, come on, man, that's really too much, isn't it? No single statement from Trump or his administration about recent decision of London and Paris to send military mission into Ukraine that will arrive maybe today, maybe tomorrow or day after into Kyiv-controlled territory, which is a clearly attempt to further escalate this proxy war with Russia and provoke wider war, actually, direct war between Russia and NATO. And besides that, we have this report from originally from Washington Post, by the way, that then was used as a source by TASS news agency, that EU also considers to send air and sea forces because they have not enough capabilities to send large ground force into Kyiv-controlled territory. And despite all these provocations, Trump is threatening Russia, and Trump is trying to paint a picture that is Russia is derailing peace talks. When in Riyadh, preliminary agreement was reached between the sides about our Black Sea initiative, and to make sure that this new, let's say, grain deal will not share the fate of the previous one when Western so-called elites did not honor the agreement that they signed up for. This time Russia come up with their preconditions in order to this agreement work. But EU bureaucracy of the EU member states that are also NATO member states were very quick to reject this preliminary agreement between Russia-US delegations. So globalists are sabotaging the escalation on all directions, and still Trump somehow manages to threaten Russia and paint a picture that Russia is against the escalation. I mean, this is really too much, man. I mean, really too much of a nonsense, right? And therefore, I hope Russian president will decline Trump's call, because I'm 100% convinced he has much more serious stuff to do than to talk to some freaking clowns, man. That's it. And when it comes to this particular news, let's go through some details here. European countries are considering sending air and naval forces to Ukraine due to restrictions related to the deployment of the large military contingent of their coalition of the willing. This was reported by the Washington Post, citing sources among European diplomats. According to them, Europe's focus has shifted from their prospects of sending ground forces, large number of ground forces, to an air and a sea power, as military leaders point to their limitations of deploying large contingents. In addition, some countries are proposing to deploy their air force to patrol the skies over Ukraine and the Black Sea. As Washington Post writes, in the next few weeks, European countries plan to send a group of military experts to Ukraine who will determine the number of troops sent there and their location. In addition, the European military will also hold consultations with the Kyiv authorities on the issue of strengthening the Ukrainian army to hold the future front line. So, I mean, is there any need to comment on that and explain that it's not Russia that constantly escalates, that it's collective West, because it is, right? Moscow's position didn't change. Russian leadership was clear from the very beginning that the deployment of the troops of NATO member states will be considered by Moscow as a direct involvement of these countries in their hostility against Russia, and appropriate measures will be taken. These NATO troops, no matter how they're going to be disguised by EU bureaucracy or their NATO bureaucracy, these troops will be seen by Russia as a combatants. And no one should be surprised when appropriate measures will be taken. And I'm afraid that's exactly what globalists want. They want to provoke wider war. They want to corner Russia, kind of, when Russian forces will have no option, when Russian leadership will have no option but to authorize strikes on these NATO troops on Kiev-controlled territory. And then NATO countries will start whining about it, and they're trying to get fully involved in this war. Because I guess globalists and their puppets in the governments of European states are still thinking that they can achieve strategical defeat of Russia. They probably still thinking that they can defeat Russia, by the way. That's how delusional they are. And whenever it comes to potential confrontation between Russia and NATO, I'll always remember statement that Russian president made in 2024, that was, or 2023, when he said that we did not even started yet. And he was correct, by the way. If it comes to it, we will really start. And I don't think globalists or their puppets in the governments of these collectivist countries or those countries themselves are ready for what they are about to receive in that case, if they go on with their large-scale escalation. But they are clearly pushing towards that, isn't it? They are clearly pushing towards wider war, and unfortunately, hopes of many people in US and worldwide were shattered by the actions of the Trump's administration, because they were thinking that Trump is about peace, but in reality, he is not about peace. And his recent threats towards Russia is prime example of that. Instead of addressing provocative actions of the European states, European NATO member states, he chose to attack Russia and the Russian president, which is, it's not just wrong, but it's clearly indicator that US and Europe, they are playing together, by the way. They are one team, right? And none of them should be trusted, ever. I'm talking about elites, obviously. And dear friends, before I continue, let me notice, if I may, that this project, this media project, independent one from Russia, is completely subscriber funded, and exists only as long as you support project, my work. And if you like what you see, if you think it is necessary, voice from Russia to be heard in an English-speaking world, if my programs are informative, interesting, useful, then please consider to support her. You can do it with their donations through PayPal platform or Boosty platform, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment, including crypto addresses, in case you are good with crypto. And so, yes, and many thanks to all the members of our community who supported and continues to support my work. Thank you. And dear friends, let's continue with some more news. How long is this update? It's already 19 minutes, okay. So RIA Novosti is reporting that, Trump went to threaten Zelensky also, because he is upset that seems like Kyiv regime is emboldened so much by the globalists that they are refusing to sign up for this rare deal with US. Well, it's better to listen what Trump had to say.
Zelensky, by the way, I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth, and now he's saying, well, you know, I want to renegotiate the deal. He wants to be a member of NATO. Well, he was never going to be a member of NATO. He understands that. So if he's looking to renegotiate the deal, he's got big problems.
So who knows what Trump meant while saying that Zelensky has some big problems, sir. If he will start renegotiating that deal. He is doing this, actually. And there are more and more articles being published, especially in the Western so-called media, about negative attitude of their officials there in Ukraine in regards to this deal, because they are calling this proposal from US as a robbing of the Ukraine and their people of Ukraine. I don't think Zelensky's regime cares about people, but I guess they care about assets that they might lose and sources of income that they're gonna lose if this deal that is proposed by US will be signed and will go in force. Because according to that deal, US is basically will be in charge of almost all economical activity in Kiev-controlled territory. So we have another article on this matter, by the way, in Le Monde, according to which Zelensky is cornered by their new US resource deal. So the new version of their agreement on revenues from mineral extraction in Ukraine proposed by the United States to Kiev puts Vladimir Zelensky in a hopeless situation, offering a choice between vassalization and the risk of losing the support of their strong ally. This opinion is published on the website of the newspaper Le Monde. The outline of their economic partnership proposed by the Trump administration looks like a complete vassalization of the Ukraine, with their transfer of rights to all its resources and infrastructure. The publication's columnist Marine Zhego described a deal. She recalls that initially U.S. demands were limited to compensation from Ukraine in the amount of 500 billion US dollars. Kyiv rejected that deal, as well as the next option, where the amount was no longer specified. In the new document, Washington indicates that the final amount that Kyiv will have to pay the US will be calculated later and fixed in their agreement. In addition, now their agreement also covers all infrastructure projects and does not include any security guarantees at all. According to a journalist, if signed, this deal will increase the US economic influence in Europe many times over and call into question Ukraine's accession to the EU due to non-compliance with their competition rules adopted in the association. So, well, let's see what is going to happen. Seems like Trump and the forces that are behind him are determined to grab as much as possible and keep control their territory, and it is highly likely that they will force Zelensky to sign up for on whatever papers. But question is, who will acknowledge Zelensky's those papers that is signed by Zelensky, because he is illegitimate. Trump didn't like when Russian president pointed out illegitimacy of Zelensky and credibility and questioned his credibility, but this is a major issue that has to be addressed, because Zelensky has no legitimacy, period. Ukraine's constitution prolongs Rada's mandate during the martial law, Rada being a parliament there. But Ukraine's constitution does not prolong president's mandate during the martial law. So Zelensky should resign when his time expired, and head of state Rada should take over until elections will be held, but this did not happen, isn't it? It is what it is. Anyways, let's see what is going to happen. Trump does make quite a lot of statements today in one direction, tomorrow in other. It is difficult to really understand what is going on in the White House and in Washington in general. Quite chaotic stuff, for sure. Anyways, this is not all, by the way. Trump also went to say that Greenland is going to be US, under US 100%. So US President Donald Trump has said he is sure that Washington will take over Greenland and that he has already had absolutely real conversations about annexing a Danish autonomous territory. So, yes, by the way, I mean, unfortunately, locals in Greenland had not even slight chance to defend themselves, and Denmark also has no chance to defend its territorial integrity because formerly Greenland is an autonomous region of the Denmark, right? And if Washington is determined to annex this territory, that's what they're gonna do, probably. Although Greenland's prime minister, fired back at Trump, a newly elected prime minister of Greenland, Jens Frederik Nielsen, has urged the people of Greenland to unite and make it clear to US President Donald Trump that Washington will never take control of the island, stating that Arctic territory's future belongs solely to its residents. Well, strong words, strong statements, but let's be real here. Against US, Greenland or Denmark has no chances. RT is reporting that Israel demands Hamas to flee Gaza. Israel is ready to negotiate an end to the Gaza conflict if Hamas lays down arms and leaves their enclave. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared. And yesterday I also see articles in Russian media according to which Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet members also went to say that once issue with Gaza is resolved, then they will start adopting Trump's proposal about they call it voluntary migration of the locals into Egypt or outside of their Gaza, but we'll understand that what they're gonna do is to force Palestinians out of Gaza, and I guess preparations to do so is already under place. Israel is already conducting quite large-scale military operations in the Gaza Strip, and I don't think they are going to stop. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Iran rejects US direct talks. So Iran is in response later to the US President Donald Trump refused Washington's request to direct talks with Tehran on the nuclear program. The Republic's President Masoud Pezeshkian stated his words were reported by the local IRNA agency. In this response, although the question of direct negotiations between the two countries was rejected, it was stated that the path of indirect negotiations is open, and it was emphasized that Iran has never shied away from negotiations, and only their violation of their obligations by the Washington caused problems on this path, which must certainly be compensated and their trust into United States restored. It is precisely this behavior of the United States that will determine the future path of the negotiations, he stated. And understandable statement, by the way. There was an agreement, nuclear deal in place, right? That was signed up during the Obama's era, right? Obama's presidency. But then Trump came to office and he just rejected this agreement that was signed by previous administration. And obviously when such behavior is becoming a norm in the West, in the US in this particular case. When one administration is signing up for something, another is rejecting it. It is difficult to do business with such a country, to have a trust into anything that comes out from Washington, right? And Iran has every reason to be cautious and to be open for negotiations, but with participation of the third parties. It does make all the sense, right? But Trump is on a different page here, and as he loves to do, he threatened Iran also. And let's hear what he had to say.
On Iran, the president said he's also considering secondary tariffs if Iran doesn't agree to a nuclear deal. Quote, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing, and it will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before.
So what can I say, dear friends? Trump is threatening Iran with a bombing campaign, and this is extremely serious. This is extremely serious because it will, entire world will feel that. Entire world will feel that. Iran is several times bigger than Iraq, by the way. Just take a look at the map. This is Iraq here. This is Iran. Iran's armed forces are incomparably more battle ready than Iraqi army was, and they're more determined to defend their country and their people. And also one should keep in mind that it takes almost nothing for Iran to shut down navigation through Hormuz Strait. And if that happens, impact will be felt all around the world, because none of the oil and gas from Persian Gulf will reach world market, which means extremely high prices on oil, on LNG, on gas, and eventually, of course, that means hike in inflation in ways that we might have not seen world might have not seen since the 70s, maybe, when there was some situation in Middle East again, right? It was the 70s, isn't it? When Saudi Arabia stopped providing oil to US, there was some issues between the sides. So yes, situation is extremely difficult. And of course, if Iran will get attacked by US, Israel, some other US allies, then Iran will retaliate. And Iranian leadership already said that US military bases in a region will be targeted, and Iran definitely has capabilities to do so. Right? So extremely dangerous stuff. And I don't know if anybody really had hopes that Trump's administration going to be administration for peace. I guess these people no longer think that way, because this administration is no any lesser hawkish than any previous one. It is what it is. And dear friends, remember, I was always saying that Western ruling class wants to provoke major war in the Middle East, regional war, to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and cut off China from energy sources from this region. And I'm afraid exactly that is happening. This is the main reason behind this assault on Iran that is in preparations right now. Political assault has already begun, and I'm afraid soon military phase might also take place, and all because of the geopolitical struggle between Western ruling class and the global South, which is basically led by, in some sense, by China being a major economy, right? So extremely dangerous developments, but yet again, seems like there is no force in this world that can bring Western ruling class to their senses, at least for now. Who knows what is going to happen in the future? But anyways, dear friends, this is it for now. A relatively short update. Hopefully you will find it informative, interesting, and useful. Have a wonderful day. and take care. And if you want to support her, all the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. Bye for now.